What is a photograph? For me, a fragment of quicksilver, a lucid dream, a scribbled note from the subconscious to be deciphered, perhaps over years.
It is a monologue trying to become a conversation, an offering, an alibi, a salute.
Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 205 for the Ides of April. So sorry.
I think
Middle
we have to
of
drop
April,
the Ides.
2023. I never dropped the Ides. Well, but it's tax day too.
Oh, tax day for you. Ours is the end of April.
Yeah, but we're a bigger country.
Yeah, but you're a big country.
It's just like
The sooner you get it done, the better.
You know what? I didn't get mine done on time or sent on time, so I have to file an extension. Not that it's a big deal, but it's maybe I got to pay a little bit more or something like that. But we get to extend for 6 months till October. So I just have to have an appointment with my accountant to find out like what am I doing these days, because I don't feel like I'm in business anymore. So I'm just doing freelance work. So there you go. How are you?
I'm doing well. Weather's warmed up here. It was sunny. So walking the dog after work today. It was all very nice.
Yeah, you sent that video.
Yeah.
You guys with the vertical videos already.
Well, it's
you're being like the young people with the vertical videos.
That and my Darth Vader breathing you can hear on that video.
Yeah, I heard the Darth Vader breathing.
Not cool.
Well, we're hitting spring, but and the pollen is getting out there, and I started sneezing, and it's always a wonderful experience.
Springtime.
Yeah. And, we were, it's just, if we were in the Middle Ages, New York City, it would have been really interesting because we had an earthquake and an eclipse within 4 days of each other.
Sounds like the end times to me.
It was certainly times that earthquake scared the out of me. Yes. And for anybody who's living on the West Coast or lives in earthquakes, to you, if you're living in New York, this does not happen that often. And in fact, it was it wasn't in New York City that it happened. It was in New Jersey, and it was, I think, the fourth most intense earthquake in recorded times in our area. So it was pretty bad. I mean, I guess it was like a 4.8 in New Jersey. I don't know what that means for the rest of us, in the zone. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not that intense, but it was enough to, like, my building, and you've been in this building, and I live on the 12th floor, and so I've been in an earthquake here before too, and I think it was 2010, 2011, I think we had an earthquake here. The building was jumping up and down.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It wasn't swaying. Well, and it also started swaying because I'm on the 12th floor. So it's almost like, like a tree. It's whipping at the top. Yeah. And, this building was built in 1962 in New York. They didn't design it for earthquakes. So, there was no damage, but things were moving around a lot. And my cat Opie, he was like, something's up. And usually he doesn't get rocked by anything like fireworks, the hot rods with the engines backfiring. He gets a little bit, but he's like, you saw him. He's kind of like but he was like looking around like, what the hell happened? Look at this picture of him like, holy crap, what the hell, what's going on? But he still was okay. But it was just like, but that was it was enough to get you old. And then I'm like writing on Facebook, holy crap, there was just an earthquake.
Yeah, you were kind of live texting it to me. I'm sitting at my desk at work.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. I was like, well, I had to tell somebody.
And I was telling you all about the U.S. Geological Survey. Go to the site and post your observations.
Yeah, there was actually some good stuff. I did post my observations. And I was watching the rings sort of the concentric rings of reports sort of move out further and further, and seeing how far it went. But yeah, that was crazy. That was really crazy.
They filled it from Philly to the Great Lakes, apparently. Like it was shallow.
I saw there was a few reports down in the south too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. There was like very few, but there was like little pinpricks of someplace down in the Carolinas too. So,
wow.
I guess it's just the way the East Coast is designed and stuff like that for the
it's all one piece.
Anyway,
yeah,
that was enough to wake you up, and it's just anyway. But then we had our everybody was listening to this probably obviously we had the eclipse. We were scheduled to have clouds on Monday, and actually it wasn't too bad. And, it was actually not so bad, except the clouds finally kicked in after I think we had probably another 20 or 30 minutes of the moon passing. But I ended up the first time I've ever photographed an eclipse, because I'd never had been ready for it, and this was everybody's making a big thing about it. So I bought the filter ahead of time and put it on my my 100 to 600 Fuji, and I had a 1.4 teleconverter on it, so it's about the equivalent on a full frame of about 1200 millimeters. Cool. Pretty nice. And I had it set up on the roof. We got let up on our roof, which a few people in the building were allowed to go up. Well, we're all allowed to go up. We're not allowed to go up, but the super opened it up and we went up there.
Yeah.
And I had set up my I was shooting with the Fuji XH2, so trying to get the most amount of megapixels, and I just put that filter on. It was perfect. It was like a 16 or 18 stop ND, and it was absolutely perfect. And I had the little bent out screen set up, and as people were coming up to the roof, I was saying, "Hey, come here! Before we put your glasses on, take a look, because this way they could see what it looks like close up." Yeah, and then when they get closer, they're like, wow. I'm like, okay, look, just touch. I go, touch the screen. I'm like, what? I go, touch the screen. And I had the camera set up for touching the screen to trigger the shutter.
The shutter, yeah.
So they would tap it and you hear the shutter sound. I'm like, you just took a picture. I'm like, oh, really? So it was very exciting. So yeah, it was. I was kind of blown away. We only had about, I think we were 90% here.
Yeah. That's enough.
Which,
I mean, the sequence that you showed me or you sent to me is pretty cool.
Yeah, I've never done that before, and I was like, okay, well, how am I going to display these? And so, yeah, I think I did a display of like 10 different. I can't even talk. 10
phases.
Different phases. Thank you, phases. That's the word. 10 different phases of the moon. But what was fun is that as I was doing it in Photoshop, I was dragging in the layers and then setting up the blending mode for screen so that they would show through, the black would sort of become transparent. And as I'm dragging in all the layers, I think I had like 15 layers, and I actually cut them down. But as I put all the 15 layers, I dragged them all on top of each other, and it made this sort of abstract kind of. Did I show you that picture? I'll put it in the show notes. It's sort of like a bunch of the eclipse phases, all sort of
one like
montage on top of each other.
One to the
no, like all
the one
all
that's
sandwiched
the geometric,
together, the sandwiched,
the shape. Yeah.
And I looked at, I had just dragged them in like that, and I was looking, and I was like, that's actually kind of cool. And I didn't arrange them. I had just dragged them in because I was making the Photoshop document. Dragged them, looked at the picture and said, oh. And so I just did save as. I think, geez, I hope I saved that document. But I definitely did save as, now I'm thinking I might not have saved the document. Oh boy. But at least I got the shot.
What did you send me?
Anyway,
what did you just sent?
Well, no, I sent it to you, but like that was the document that I was making the sequence pictures that I did in a diagonal.
Right.
But initially I had to drag in all the layers.
Oh, I see.
So as I dragged in all the layers and before I resized them, I made this sort of abstract, and that was accidental, and I really liked that. And I put it up on Facebook, and a friend of mine who's a meteorologist on a news channel, and he's like, I think it's News 12, but he's now in New Jersey. He texted me and he said, I love this picture. I want to have it on my wall. So now I'm thinking I better have the
You're
high
gonna
res
have
version.
to look at what you sent me and then recreate it. I don't know what else you're gonna have to do.
I am really hoping I have that someplace. Well, at least I have a high res JPEG. I'm pretty sure I have a high res JPEG. Anyway, I thought that was a nice. Actually, I liked it because it was a different way to look at the eclipse. It was just this abstract kind of jumble of phases together. So anyway, sorry, I'm going on about this thing too long. But it was quite enjoyable. Now I have got this filter that I have no use for. Although I could point it at the sun. Yeah. I tested it up with just taking a shot
at
of the sun.
1200 millimeters pointing gear at the sun.
Yeah.
Great. Something was like, risk your sensor, risk your eyesight. It's all good.
Well, it's either going to work or it's not going to work.
Or it's not going to work.
Exactly. It worked. Yeah, it worked.
That's
Although
great.
I haven't, hopefully it didn't damage the sun. I can't imagine it would damage the sensor. I mean, it's a lot of stops.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so that was an experience. And you said, unfortunately, you had some clouds. So
we had cloud, and we were maybe 35%. So I don't know. We wouldn't really have noticed. I don't think where I was. I just stayed at my desk and looked at webcams, and I was like, okay, that's fine. I can keep working. So yeah, we had one here a few years ago that was sort of in the 70-80%.
Well, you get the aurora down there too, so you get all this. You get all this, and you have the galaxies that you can look up at night and see.
Yeah.
So,
it reminds me. I mean, you've kind of inspired me to maybe get back into some more serious astro instead of just what I've, fell into, or spur of the moment go out and set up. So I'll be a little bit more. Particularly now, the last few years, we've had aurora at all times of the year.
Really?
And so if there's, remember once when it's kind of coincidental when they were shooting that movie the miniseries The Last of Us here downtown or whatever, and the crew apparently, because I had a friend on the crew, they're going up and down the highway here, and they were driving to Edmonton, it's about 3 hours north of here. And it was in May, I want to say, and there was spectacular aurora, and I guess the crew stopped, and the stars, whatever, the stars of the show went out to watch the stars and the aurora just by the side of the highway because it was so spectacular. And that was in May, and I have a specific memory of hearing that story. So we're coming up on, if we have, there's a lot of sunspot activity. And I see there were some sunspots on your pictures there.
Yeah, that was cool. It was fun to see other people's pictures because other people were posting their test pictures of the of that too, and it's like, oh, they've got the same spots.
Well, it's the same. And
then I know, but it's just kind of it. That was the thing about the eclipse, or even this kind of event, is how it brought everybody together.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was this giant kind of gathering, and everybody was stopping and looking at the same thing. And so, like when I see that someone else in another part of the country is photographing the sun and they've got the same spots on it, it just felt like, I know, you could do the same thing with the moon, right? Yeah. But there was something connective about that experience, that we're all seeing the same thing and we're all looking up and so seeing somebody else who's got the same spots on the sun, like it just took me, I don't photograph the sun that often. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do sunrises, but pointing the camera straight up at the sun as and seeing it as a star and as ball and whatnot, and seeing that someone else has got sort of the exact same framing of it. And I was like, yeah, we're looking at the same thing at the same time. And anyway, it was kind of cool. But yeah, sunspots, I had a friend who, when I worked at the image bank, submitted shots of sunset, and I think he was shooting Kodachrome or something. And I'm looking at them because I have to loop the pictures, and I think he was using a really long lens. I mean, obviously it was a long lens, but I'm looking at this picture of the sunset, and I'm like, what is this thing on the sun? And I thought it was some problem with the film. And of course, as I started going through all the similar shots, it was the same. It was in the same spot, and I was looking at it, and I was like, "Holy crap!" He photographed sunspots, and it was with Kodachrome film, so it was really nicely. It wasn't like overexposing because it was sunset. It was going through all the layers of the atmosphere, so you could really. But it was a big one. It was bigger than the one that I photographed, And I called him up and I said, hey, Mark, you got pictures of this. You got pictures of the sunspots. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah. Because he couldn't see it while he was photographing. So anyway, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, the next one is in the States in 2044. And, well, I feel like I got it. I didn't travel to totality. And I actually would have been kind of bummed out if I went upstate New York and it was cloudy there, and, so 90% was here. I'm 90% happy, right?
And there was mixed reviews at Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. There was the news media was out there, and it was cloudy for most of the day. People were coming from all over the world.
Yeah,
and, so it was kind of hit or miss. But.
Yeah, well, I have no complaints whatsoever, and even the clouds kicked in at the end, and I was like, you know what? I got enough. I got the last shot that looked like just was symmetrical nicely, and I was like, yep, I'm happy. It was,
good. I'm glad, man. It's cool to do stuff like that.
Yeah, and it was just, and sorry, the other thing, a couple
and
more
another
things. Another thing, it's so different to look at a camera screen, right? You're looking at the camera screen and you're seeing it and it looks like a little television, but then I would put the glasses on and look up, and that was a totally different experience. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just something else to see it in reality than as opposed to looking at it in a camera. So I'm glad I brought glasses and was able, I stopped every now and then. I made sure I looked up to actually experience the event with my eyes and not just through the camera screen, because as I've probably mentioned here a zillion times before, so many times in my life, I've gone to and experienced some location or place through the viewfinder of my camera, and and not the effect itself. Also, I did take, I don't know if you saw, I can't remember if I posted it with you, I did take like 5 Polaroids.
Yes, of the people gathered, including yourself. Yeah,
including myself. And again, it was because I wanted to have the artifact of the day. Mm-hmm. So, these shots, I think I get 5 of them. One of them was photographed by my neighbor, but me and Ed, who you met, my neighbor Ed. Hello, Ed. You're probably listening to this. I don't know.
Hi, Ed.
I have to put the date on these things, but I wanted the actual artifact of the day. So these pictures were taken on apocalypse eclipse.
Wow, what's on your brain, buddy?
No, there's a meme that was going around that shows a sign that says it's not the apocalypse, it's the eclipse. Calm down, or something like that. Okay. So we have a show, I think.
We do.
we could end right now. No.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about what to talk about tonight, I wanted to have both of us introduce some perhaps new photographers that
new to
maybe
us.
Not new, new to us. Well, discovering.
Yeah.
And so we have a couple of photographers to go, and I thought, we could talk about them, little mini deep dives, as it were.
Yeah.
And just introduce the world to these people, especially because for the photographer I'm going to talk about, I'm embarrassed that I never knew about her until recently. So, and then the photographer you're about to talk about, I never heard about either.
A couple of months ago, yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you start with who you've got it's like we're doing book reports.
We're doing the book reports.
Right.
So, so discovery is one of my favorite parts of this hobby of collecting photo books, as you see. And in this case, I discovered this gentleman through Ted Forbes. He does his mail day videos on YouTube, and he shows books from different people of different skill levels and so on. And he showed.
And these are books that people sent
into him. Yeah, and so he's just kind of gets all these free books. I mean, good for him. I kind of wish people would just send me books. That'd be good. Actually, that's not, people have sent us books. I should just shut my mouth.
Yeah.
But so the gentleman we're talking about is a younger German photographer called Holger Nitschke. Forgive me, Holger, if you're listening. He's essentially a fashion photographer, and he specializes in film. He shoots film, black and white negatives for the most part. He has done some color work, but I think most of the work that I've seen of his are in black and white. So during and I had the book that Ted showed and that I have since purchased. It's called Some Squares, and what it is the whole upshot of the book was his discovery during the pandemic of the Rolleiflex, twin lens reflex.
It was that recently.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so he had all the different cameras, and he shot 35 millimeter, and I think he's done digital as well. But he discovered and really dug in shooting with this twin lens reflex. And so the work that he does, that he creates, it's fashion. So we're talking about young female models for the most part. On the fashion side, he's also a bit of a celebrity photographer. So not being German, I don't recognize the celebrities that he's shot, but that's just my problem. And so,
Yes.
So his images have that wonderful twin lens kind of throwback feel to them, and at the same time they have a modern sensibility. The models are wearing modern clothes, sometimes experimental clothes. They're posed sometimes in experimental ways. I think it's some of the pictures are tongue-in-cheek because the poor girl is really uncomfortable. The way she's standing all twisted and contorted and sort of looking deadpan into the camera, like, take this picture. So there's some humor in there. It's pretty subtle. But I really like kind of the softness of his work. It's the model in their environment. It could be in a muddy field. It could be in the bush somewhere. It could be in an old home. And he just provides these wonderful, I would say, like shallow depth of field for the most part, just so that they have that kind of medium format feel about them. And I saw that Ted Forbes featured the book. I bought it, and I'm very happy with it. In fact, I sent an email to him thanking him for the book. And when the book arrived, it was during some really cold weather we were having here, and I said, in the middle of this cold Canadian prairie winter, your book is like a breath of spring air, So, and that's what it felt like, because it was like lovely, kind of moody, romantic, but not in a sappy way. Just very, a very engaging and relaxing experience to go through of it. It's not really kind of in your face. It's very soft and has a wonderful soft aesthetic. I like the way he's processed his images as well. There's good tones. The book is lovely.
Did he send the book to Ted?
Yes, he sent the book to Ted.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Okay, so he watches Ted as well. Okay, yeah.
I think
cool.
a lot of us will watch Ted.
Yeah, no, I get that, but sometimes I don't think necessarily commercial photographers in other countries are watching him. But that's kind of cool that he sent the book to him. You sent me. What's his first name again?
Holger, Holger.
Holger. You sent me his website, and I looked through it, and it's funny. We haven't talked a lot about fashion photographers on the show, except maybe
Avedon.
I mean, we talked about Avedon.
Yeah.
Irving Penn a little bit, but not really, so much as fashion. And I keep forgetting how much I do like certain types of fashion photography.
Mm-hmm.
And his really harkens back to sort of an old style that feels kind of like the kind of photography I might have seen when I was growing up too. It was because he's shooting on film and it's very grainy, and aesthetic is different, but from the models because they're modern looking and whatnot. But there's something in the feel of the images that on his website, which I dig his website too, because it is so simple.
Yeah.
We'll put the link in the show notes, but you literally, it's just like a list of pictures straight up and down. There's no dissolved slideshows or anything like that. He's almost presenting his images as if they were a strip of film that you're hanging, that's hung up drying, and you're looking down this sort of line of 2.25, not all of them are 2.25, but again, this line of images. And so it's a nice presentation as well. It has a, he's he's younger than us, but it's got a feel of the kind of photography that I grew up with, or at least that I was interested in. And I keep forgetting how much I like fashion work. So when you showed me his website, I was like, it was really nice to look at. It was just pleasing. And so I can see having a book of his work where it's, not every fashion photographer is worth looking at pictures in a book format, but his have an extra feel to it.
Yeah. And it's not racy. It's not in your face. It's just very gentle, soft, just wonderful. It's very unique. I think his work's very unique.
Yeah. And in the website, there's a link to a video, which I'll also put in the show notes. So YouTube, so it's almost like a promo video in a way for him. It's a little slickly made, but it does show him going out and in the field and photographing a model. And then one of those pictures is actually in his portfolio. This woman in sort of like this, what looks like, I don't want to say, flat sort of landscape. And he's photographing black and white, and what's really interesting about that picture is how he does a full frame, so you see the black edges of the frame, and then there's this horizontal black frame where the horizon was sort of cutting through it of that picture. But it was nice to see how he worked with the model, and there's all this pre-prep and getting her dressed and finding the right clothing, but like when he's out there in the field with her, at least it was for this documentary, this little video. It's just him and the model, right? Yeah. There's no assistance. There's no lights. It's like this interaction between him and his subject and the background, and that felt very pure. Like it was a nice, there's no tension in, like you think of, being on a fashion show catwalk where there's all this, this hubbub and racket and music and all that kind of stuff. One thing I thought was interesting in the video was he was talking about using the twin lens. He can't make direct eye contact with the model, and so the interaction is not between him and the model. It's between the model and the camera. He says it's like a brick in between him and the model. And, in that way, he prefers that because he wants it to have a space for interpretation for the viewer. And it's great because that's exactly, that's kind of the feeling I get. It's sort of like something going on here. Like she is being photographed, but she's not, the model is not having, staring straight into the lens necessarily. It's just sort of, you're capturing her in that moment. And she's probably not, the subject is not also responding to any kind of, direct facial expression from a photographer. So there's no interaction, right? Her often a lot of the faces in his pictures, the models, the expression is very ambiguous. Yeah. So it has that interpretation. But so saying that, I'm thinking about, like we were just talking about Avedon, and after reading his biography and how he talked about going from the 2.25 to the large format camera because of that very interaction. Like he wanted to look at their faces, and he couldn't because of the 2.25. He was always looking down and wasn't interacting. And it's interesting to have, they're both really good photographers approaching similar kinds of subjects in space and time with different kinds of ideas of how to produce a photograph of a subject using, dealing with the equipment and the interaction between the photographer and the subject. So it's like almost like, neither one is better or worse, right? They're both really good, and look at the images that they're producing. And this guy is doing it in a way on purpose. Like this is what he wants to do. He wants to have that ambiguity between himself and the viewer and the model, so that they can, you can interpret it yourself. So, yeah. Is the book mostly is like it's all the fashion stuff? I mean,
it's all fashion.
No other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see much on his website of other subjects. So he really just focuses on the
there's some pictures of trees here, just sort of caught along while they're walking to wherever their location is. It's just to add a bit of mood, but 99% of the images in the book, it's called Some Squares, are the models. And it's a wonderful surprise. Like I'm very happy. Very happy to have this book.
You haven't talked much about fashion photography either to me. So that's why I'm kind of like when we were talking about doing this episode, and you sent me the link to this guy, I was surprised. I was like, it didn't, wasn't the kind of pictures that I've heard you talk about that much. I mean,
maybe
correct me if I'm wrong.
Keeping it a secret,
wrong.
But. Yeah, no, I really followed the supermodel era of, Peter Lindbergh and Francesco Scavullo and Sante D'Orazio, all these guys that were shooting fashion and in the 80s and 90s. And Herb Ritz, like these were the guys that for me, they had kind of dream jobs. It's not just because they were shooting pretty girls. There was a kind of a kind of swagger that these guys had shooting this work. And they're busy all the time. I like the idea of that too. And there was a part of me.
But those guys I can see you talking to me about. Like, those are all the, they're the ones that are up there and we know about them. And this guy was sort of off the radar, but you said you found him on TED Force. But again,
he's a younger guy, so he would have just come up in the last 10, 15 years, right?
And he's saying during the pandemic, he's finding the medium format just recently. So, I mean, he's been shooting film for a while, obviously.
Yeah.
Well,
in the video too, they show him in his darkroom in his home. And that was nostalgia right there, watching that sequence of him with the big Patterson. And he had a big Patterson tank too with the deep one, which I had borrowed. I never had one myself. So when I had
I didn't like the plastic tanks. I hated those. But he was shooting medium format. So, those are kind of easier at the medium format.
I didn't mind the plastic reels and tanks because the Patterson reels were adjustable. So. And I was a starving kid,
No, I never got used to the back and forth motion that you have to do to wrap the film up, because I learned on steel reels. So even medium format, although of course with steel reel, here we go. There's two old guys.
It's the darkroom equivalent of driving a stick. Yeah.
Yeah, but the steel reels, if you didn't do it right, you end up crinkling the edges,
or the emulsion would stick together. I had that happen.
I never had the emulsion stick together. I will say that for sure. I was very good at this.
10th grade accident. That one, I'll never.
That's a bummer. Yeah, but and I would see other people do it, but I learned from real photographers. Like I was like, I got this, and I could do it in the dark. But the Patterson, anyway, to go back to his video, which I'll post in the show notes. One of the things that was great in that darkroom is when he was hanging up the film to dry, and then he took his fingers slid them down the fingers. I was like,
after
I
the
used
photo
to do that
flow
too.
And it's dripping.
After the photo flow is
on,
and
you make sure your fingers don't have any crud on them, and you wipe them. If I had the Patterson squeegee too, but I was afraid. Very often that would scratch.
Yeah, I didn't like that idea, because if you use your fingers, there was usually nothing stuck to your fingers, right? And there was soft. And so I was doing it mostly with 35 millimeter film, not with medium format, because I didn't really shoot that, but it was the same thing. So watching that video of him doing that for you in the bathroom darkroom kind of thing, I didn't have a bathroom darkroom,
right?
But it was the things that he was doing, like pulling up the paper, and even the red light, and there was something about it was just something about the way they filmed that darkroom scene. Not a big deal, but it, like, in relationship to the kind of photography he's doing, yes, it was nice. It was a nice flashback to the things that I used to do. And again, like I have a little nostalgia for the darkroom. I mean, there's aspects of the darkroom I liked. I was never.
I could smell.
Well, I could smell it too. Yeah. I used to have bad reactions to something with my hands, because I never wore gloves when I was in the darkroom. And I wouldn't use tongs all the time, but occasionally I have this bad reaction where my skin would start to peel off on my hands.
Oh, I never had that.
It was really
problem.
weird. Yeah, I know. But anyway, but that whole like there was aspects of the dark room that I liked, the solitude, the picking of the paper, there was just a bunch of things that they were doing in that, and then especially when he was drawing the film, and he did that. When he did that with the fingers, I was like, that's great. Oh, and by the way, photo flow. Someone was talking about photo flow in relationship to inks with fountain pens as a lubricant.
Okay, so for our listener, photo flow is like a it's a wetting agent. It's like a detergent without soap. It's just suds,
right,
and nothing sticks to it, and it helps the film, breaks the surface tension on the film, so it dries uniformly and doesn't dry with spots. What you used to do was you used to put like a teeny tiny drop in the film had was in a tank of water, and you would just like put like 1 or 2 drops in, and it would just flood it over. Then you take the film out. I think it was after you washed it. I would agitate it, go up and down in the.
Yeah, but you wouldn't do it too much because otherwise you get bubbles. Yeah, and then you'd hang it up, and then you'd have to sort of, you could use a squeegee, or some of us used our fingers, and we just dragged our fingers down the film very, nicely, and that would help sort of smooth it out. And anyway, so he did that. That was great. It was great to see that. So anyway,
Holger Nitschke.
Anything else about this guy?
No, I think we'll just leave our listeners to discover. I think if you like quiet fashion photography, he's one of the guys. And
I would agree.
I'm happy with my interactions with him. He replied to me, and which was kind of nice. He sent me a postcard in with my book too of one of his fashion pictures, and the personal touch, man. It's very cool.
That's cool.
I'm glad to know of him and to interact with him. So
yeah. All right. Yeah. So go check his work out. If you like fashion work, I think you'll like his stuff. Even if you don't, I think there's something very appealing to it. And the last thing I'll say is I didn't get the sense that he was using film to be like
pretentious,
trendy, or something like that.
Exactly.
No, I really get the feeling that the film was part of what he needed to do. You know, and so I appreciated that. I mean, that really came off in the video as well. And because I always get the sense, not always, but I get a lot of sense that people are doing film just because of a whole bunch of other reasons, and not for what film is really about, which I'm not sure what it really is about, but I can't quite put those into words yet. Anyway, thanks for introducing me to him.
I'm happy to do it. Let's switch over to you, my friend. Who's your discovered?
Okay, so artist? I have a little backstory. Maybe I follow a bunch of photography groups on Facebook, and the way the Facebook feed works, it just feeds you stuff here and there, and of course, I'm finding a lot of photographers who I've never heard of before. And to my embarrassment, but I don't know what I don't know what I don't know, and I'm actually kind of happy that I get to discover new people, even people who I probably was growing up with that I didn't know about. And so somewhere along the line, I'm looking through my Facebook feed, and these pictures pop up of these empty rooms, and windows open with bed and shades or curtains blowing. And I was like, who's work at whose is this? And I looked up the name, and it was a woman named it's Eva Rubinstein. Or her name is spelled EVA, but I think it's pronounced Eva Rubinstein. Okay. And I had never heard of her before, and she's still with us, photographer. Well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to read. She's new to me, so I don't really have her history. So I'm just going to read the back of her book, which doesn't have a name other than her name. So I'm just going to give you the history. I'm cheating this way, but I think it's clear. Born in Buenos Aires of Polish parents, Eva Rubinstein spent her early childhood in Paris, where at the age of 5, she began her training as a dancer. She came to the United States at the outbreak of World War II. After studying at the theater department of UCLA, she danced and acted in New York and appeared in the original company of The Diary of Anne Frank. Now divorced, now this book was in the early 70s, so this is coming from, now divorced, she is the mother of 3 children. Eva Rubinstein began photographing in 1967, receiving initial instruction and continuing encouragement from Sean Kernan. Later, study included workshops with Lisette Modell, Jim Hughes, Ken Heyman, and the late Dion Arbus. Her editorial, illustrative, and portrait photographs have appeared in major publications throughout the world. This monograph presents a selection of her personal work, which is receiving growing recognition through exhibits and the reproduction of portfolios in photographic publications. This book was produced in 1974, so we're talking like 50.
Yep.
Sorry.
Say it out loud. It's the truth.
I know. That's just weird. You and me on the same thing. I'm looking at 74. I was 10 years old when this book came out. And okay, so this book is 50 years old. It's in great shape for 50 years old. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, now I'm depressed. So I was looking, I never heard of her before, and we were talking, I think I mentioned her in the in our Unusual Collective, and our friend Keith Goldstein, he knew about her. He knows a lot of photographers. Both you guys should be talking about stuff because you guys know all these photographers that I don't know. He actually said that he has this book, or used to have it on his bedside. He'd look at it now and then. And so I'm happy that I'm learning about her, and that I just got this book in the mail today, so it was kind of cool to get it just as we're going to talk about her. But what drew me to her photograph is really the photographs that drew me, and then I was like, who is she? Mm-hmm. And these photographs of these empty rooms, and like she does other things. She had portraits and she does nudes as well, but the pictures that I saw were these sort of empty spaces, right? But very, very kind of there was something about the way she was photographing these spaces that very much pulls me into them. And like there's a kind of a lingering presence that she's capturing in these photographs. It's black and white. Obviously, it's not digital, and she's shooting on film. But there was something, I've been resonating a lot with these photographs of empty areas, spaces, and stuff like that. We were talking with we haven't done a show about liminal spaces yet, right? No. It was something we were talking about with our brother in light, Dave Swiduk, which we haven't gotten into.
In between where people move.
The spaces in between, yeah. These are not liminal spaces. I don't think these are sort of like the before or after liminal space, but there's something that's drawing them in. But anyway, I've been attracted to this type of image, and I was like, where have I seen these before? Where have I seen something that's similar? And it occurred to me that a while back I found a painter, a Danish painter. In a strange way, I found this Danish painter. His name is Wilhelm Hammershøi. And he was born in 1864, and he's Danish. And he produced these paintings of these sort of empty spaces, not necessarily always empty. I mean, often there was actually a figure in the space. It's usually his wife. And the quick story was I found his imagery through a poem that he wrote about grief. Somewhere along, because I've been collecting poems about grief. It's one of the ways I'm processing my own grief about Elizabeth dying, and I've been finding a lot of wonderful, some great solace in what people are writing about grief. And he wrote something. It wasn't a poem. It was just a paragraph about. Sorry, you hear that?
Yeah. Skaters? What is that?
I don't even get into it. Don't get me started. Anyway, it was an interesting little paragraph about dealing with grief in people. And I was like, who is this guy? And I looked up his name, and then I saw his paintings from the late 1800s into early 1900s. and these empty spaces. Sometimes they were empty. Often the image was vertical of a room with open windows, and sometimes with doors that led down like multiple rooms. Oops. Sorry, I'm holding a fountain pen and it's just started to leak all over me.
Oops.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, I better not get it on my shirt. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that, sorry, this is happening in real time. Just making sure I'm playing with this pen. Let's take it out of play here. All right, sorry. But now look at my hands.
Working man's hand. You've been in the print shop today.
Yeah, I know. I just don't want to touch my shirt with it. Sorry. This is happening all live. I'm not cutting this out. Anyway, so his images will have like this figure in it, which is often his wife, in an empty room with an empty table. These open doors leading someplace, or sometimes there's nobody in the space. And I was saying these Rubinstein pictures are very similar. They have that same kind of feel. And there was something that I was resonating with about these empty spaces, in the sense of, my own situation with empty space, right? Where there was once somebody here and now there's nobody, but the space still is there. And that's kind of what I was seeing in her images, at least of these spaces that she was photographing. So it really caught my eye. And, I was kind of surprised that I've never heard of her before. And, she's in the time period of like when I'm growing up and learning about photography. And even there's a couple of YouTube videos of her talking at through a museum in Kalamazoo. And I didn't watch it yet, but I know she's still alive, and she still talks about her photography. It was really nice. But
she was a contemporary of Ralph Gibson and Mary Ellen Mark, right? They sort of hung together for a while, or
right. I don't know about Mary Ellen Mark, but I know she's got a photograph of Ralph Gibson.
Okay,
somewhere I've seen it, and it's he's looking nice. But again, the circles that she's around, I didn't know that she had worked with Sean Kernan, and Sean Kernan actually wrote the intro to the book. And I've taken a couple of classes with Sean Kernan, and I really like his work. So I can see that, how, they would connect. But it's so interesting when this world is so small. Photographers, sort of all know each other because of these things. But anyway, it's just this, her portraits are I like them. Her nudes, there's some interesting nudes that she's done, and she's probably got a few more pictures that I haven't seen yet because I haven't done full research on them. But it's these empty spaces, and putting her work next to Hammershoi's work together, I could see that they're probably kindred spirits in some way. Although the story about Hammershoi is really interesting, of the kind of person he was. I have a feeling they were different kind of people, personality wise, but certainly kindred spirits in the ways of looking at spaces and ambiguity in these spaces. And the thing I liked about Rubinstein's work is those spaces really have a feel of, I don't know, like human beings were just there.
Okay, so I was about to ask you, what is it with you and these open spaces and curtains blown in and that sort of thing, and light streaming in through windows? I mean, I'm teasing a bit, but
no, I know.
What are you getting? How does it affect you?
Well, first of all, it's something that I don't see that often. I mean, living in New York in my apartment, these are the kind of thing. Well, Hammershoi's images are of apartments in Copenhagen, so. But even still, like, I didn't grow up with curtains and there's something that is that I have a longing to see and that I don't see ordinarily. Okay. So there's a bit of that. There's a bit of like nostalgia in the sense of like, I feel like I've seen this stuff before, but I just don't know where. Maybe it's just imagination, or it's how I picture what a home should be like. Void of, actually both, what's interesting with both of their images, a lot of their spaces have nothing in them. Like there's very little clutter. There's, there might be a couple of things in the room, like a vase or a bed or something like that, but there's often nothing in the room. And, growing up the way I did and even the way I'm living now with a lot of stuff, visual clutter in my vision. And so I look at pictures and paintings like from those two and there's sort of a fantasy of like, visual, something missing that clutter. I hate to say clutter. It's not the right word. It sounds bad. Just something for my eyes to rest. Right. There's very few elements in these images, and they say a lot. That's the thing. It's like there's so much that's said from so little. So I think there's some fantasy part of it that I wish that I could have more of. Like, I look around and I would love to take a picture like this photographer and painter, not pictures, although his paintings are very photographic. I would love to do that. That's the kind of thing that I like to do. And I can't, I'm not able to. I can't just look around my house and like, I won't have curtains and soft things. And there's just something very relaxing about it. I don't know. I'm not,
in some ways,
not being very articulate.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. It's reminding me of the pictures of the old farmhouse I went a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
Where I used to live. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking about that experience of time travel, a kind of nostalgia, a kind of sadness. I don't get that from Rubinstein's work at all. But I'm just thinking they're open, empty, void spaces where people used to live.
Your pictures or hers?
Mine. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't. Hers don't feel like there's a used to live there. There's like someone was just there, or someone's about to be there. Like they're sort of I don't know. It's like the opposite of liminal spaces. It's like the other ends of liminal spaces. Like there's something in between. The things about the empty rooms they're almost like I don't know, like a canvas, like they're like a canvas for memory and emotion.
Oh,
it's like
okay. Cool.
It's like,
that just hit me. Like, yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, tell me how did it hit you?
Well, no, it's kind of an insight, same as Nitschke's brick between the subject and the photographer. The interpretation, the viewer gets to interpret something because of that part of his process. And here, like you're talking about, like a poetic quality of the images that, these open spaces are like, what did these walls hear? Can you hear the wind blowing? All that kind of stuff. Like, what's the sensory thing going on with people in this space, even though there aren't people in this space? Like, so I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like there's also a timelessness to actually both Hammershøi's work and Rubinstein's work. I think the pictures are universal, timeless. Well, let's talk about her pictures instead of Hammershøi's. We can do a show on Hammershøi. It'd be interesting to talk about him, but that like it's and like a sense of certainly there's a sense of love in her images.
Okay.
And I don't know if it being and excuse me, like I don't mean this way, but like there's the feminine part of the photography is like, it seems to be very visible. And, sometimes you see that in her kind of work, or that kind of sensitivity in male, photographers or artists as well. I like to think of, Christopher Nolan, some of his earlier work, when he would show sort of these flashbacks of a character, like in Memento or something like that. I'm trying to think of another movie. Memento, I think, was the one that had the most, but he had these sort of sensible. Oh, and Steven Soderbergh too has this kind of sensitivity to the past through flashbacks, and there's something about those kind of things that I'm attracted to that also to me resonate with Rubinstein's work. There's a continuity between them. Of course, the other ones are moving images, and hers are still. But there's something about her imagery that feels like it's moving to me. The drapes are moving in the breeze, and I can imagine them continuing. Like I'm looking at the still frame, and I can just imagine I can see these drapes still moving, or something else. Anyway, there's something so great about looking at such, I would say, simple imagery, very well crafted, that it's got a lot of depth to it. There's not a lot of stuff in it, but it brings up a lot of stuff. And so it does feel like more emotions and fantasy and concepts and stuff like that. So that's kind of what, and there's also a bit about solitude too. There's like there's this lone part. It's not like it's a crowded space. It's very lonely. And again, I look at it, the part that I'm also resonating with is like, I'm looking around, not in my own space, and, the person who was there is not there now, so I'm on the other side of this. Like I'm looking at, and this happens a lot. I look at spaces in my apartment where Elizabeth used to be, and she's not there anymore. And then that's what some of these images do to me. They like remind me of the person who was there. And so there's just a lot. And so it was a lot when I saw the pictures in my timeline. I was like, wow. And I would like to say that's the kind of photograph I would like to take, but I don't think it's up to me to take those. Like that wouldn't be the thing I would want to do. It's not, I don't have that. I love looking at those pictures though. I love spending time with her work. In this idea of having a photograph that allows for reflection in space and, sort of a pause in the crazy world of my clutter and the New York City, and looking at something like that. So I'm trying. I'm not making a lot of sense, but I'm just like trying to be like free flowing here a little bit. And you sort of knew of her as well. I mean, I was not. You said tangentially.
Sorry, I knew some of her portraiture. I think is where I had just really? Seen in one of these photographers of the 20th century. Rundown of, here's some representative examples of her work. So that's where I kind of drew the line. She was a contemporary of Arbus and Gibson and Mary Ellen Mark.
Yeah.
That's essentially all I knew about her. I didn't know about the spaces part because the volume that I was reading had more to do with pictures of people than it did about her personal work,
Yeah. It's nice to see a photographer like her, to discover her, and she does different things. Like she's not just doing the spaces, but she has the nudes and the portraits as well. And so it's kind of really, it's cool to come across someone who can do something like that well in different aspects. And the other thing I wanted to say about the pictures, like again, what she's got and what Hammershoy also does is an incredible, the silence in their imagery is loud. If that makes any sense whatsoever. The silence is the thunderous. I remember hearing that in a movie once. The silence is the thunderous. But I get the sense that the silence in their imagery is just like it screams at me in a good way, And so I'm really happy to have found her work, and I'm really happy to have this book of hers, and to now, like, she's now part of the pantheon of stuff that of people cool. I can
growing pantheon.
Yes, it is. And I love that sense of discovery, just like you're with Holger. I'm not going to say his name right.
I'll just say his first name, Holger. Yeah.
Holger, with Holger, it's just me with Eva. I hope it's Eva. No, it's like Eva. Me with her, and it's like, I can still find people who are going to pull these kind of, feelings and stuff from me, and just, it's like I still have a lot to learn, and I love that because I still feel like I love learning about people. And then, she was in my past too, and it's nice to know we sort of, I have a couple of degrees of separation from her.
Yeah.
In a way. Not that I don't know Sean Kernan too much, but we are Facebook friends. That doesn't usually mean anything. But I did take a couple of classes with him, so I think we should do a deep dive on Sean Kernan. I would love to have him on the show. I don't know if he would actually if I could actually reach out to him. I know a couple of people who know him directly, but it'd be interesting to talk to him about her as well.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So anyway, go check her out. I'll put all the links in the show notes. I'll try to drop some of her pictures in there too, so you can just see what I'm talking about. And I'll try to I'll put some of Hammershoy's images. I'll put a link actually to a documentary about him that was BBC with Michael Palin trying to follow Hammershoy. I did a search for Hammershoy on YouTube, and there's this BBC thing. Anyway, it's interesting because it'd be to look at his work and then look at her work as well to see what I'm talking about. So I'll put that in there. But yeah, that's it. I think we had a couple of good. Yeah,
wow. It was nice. A little bit change of pace.
Yeah, and I've been wanting to
do sort of semi-shallow deep dives.
Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah. And I'd like to do more of these. I want to. I've got a whole pile of pictures on my phone of like screenshots of photographers. I was like, "Ooh, who's this?" Capture that. Who's this? I've even written about some of them in my photo journal. So it'd be great to follow up on some of these people. But yeah, cool. All right. Well, yeah. Let's wrap this up before we get too tired and get people converted. All right. So, where in the world are you? Can you be found?
Well, on Vero and X/Twitter, I can be found at WRosinPhoto. On Instagram, I'm Ward Rosin Fine Art. It's WARDROSIN Fine Art. Facebook, I'm Ward Rosin Photo. I have a website which is rosin.ca, and our unofficial podcast sponsor is Ornis Photo, ORNIS.photo, where I sell lenses and lens adapters for fun.
Lenses, 7 artisans.
7 artisans, yeah.
7 artisans, yeah. Yeah, we gotta get some of those lenses out in the world. They're so much fun.
They are.
To play with.
Sales have picked up lately. I don't know. There's a spring thing going on.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah,
got enough capital built up to.
All right.
Do another order.
Well, come check out our unofficial sponsor and help unofficially sponsor our podcast with them. Anyway, yeah. All right.
And what about you, my friend? Where can we find you?
Where am I? I'm pretty much on. Let's see. Well, Vero and Flickr of AM Rosario at AM Rosario, Instagram at AM Rosario Photo. My website is amrosario.com. But if you want to find me on Facebook, I'm going to throw that in, facebook.com/Rosario Photo. So that's a place where I put a lot of my pictures. Our website is streetshots.photography. But we've had a lot of people sign up for our Substack newsletter recently. So because our I want to say friend, he's not quite a friend yet, but the Barry and X Perello and the Candid Frame subscribed to us and recommended us. So we've gotten some subscribers lately. So go check our Street Shots Substack newsletter out at streetshots.substack.com. And if you want to leave a voicemail for us, speakpipe.com/streetshots. We've had some voicemails. That's kind of fun. And if you want to support us by buying me a coffee, you have to buy me a coffee to support us. You can go buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario. So yeah, we've got people subscribing to the newsletter. I got to write another newsletter soon. I got to figure something out. So that's cool. It's great. I can get voices out there in the world. So anyway,
it's nice to interact. And please, if you're thinking about it, please go ahead and do it.
Yes.
Fire us a DM or leave us a message on SpeakPipe. It's really
absolutely
great to get that feedback from you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's call it a night. I would call it a night.
It's a night.
It's a night. Night. Thanks for hanging in with us for tonight, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. And Ward, have a good night. Thanks.
You too, my friend. Good night.
Good night.